once again, I know you are a glutton for punishment because you just seem to really be sinking your teeth into Yu-Gi-Oh! The more we do these videos. How you feeling?
Oh, great. You're really incepting me here the more I look at these cards, you know. But I've been having a really good time with this, and glad to be back, though. I do want to mention for maybe your viewers that this will be the last one with me for at least a little while because
yeah, it will be.
My wife are having twins while she's having twins. I'm going to be there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Very excited and nervous, but I'm going to go on a little bit of a sabbatical from basically anything that I don't have to do. So unfortunately, that is this for a while, but I will no doubt be back to do it.
Of course. We will miss you, but we would love to have you back once everything is settled on your end. And so to kick off our temporary hiatus here for our last video for the foreseeable future, I thought we'd do something that's a lot of fun. You're really starting to get the grasp of the game, and I wanted to explore a mechanic of the game that's very popular by modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Standards, and that is what is called hand traps. So you're familiar with trap cards and the fact that they're cards that you can use, essentially instant speed in response to things that your opponent is doing. Hand traps are monsters that have quick effects that you would use them from the hand, essentially in a similar sense as regular trap cards. But these are very popular because they also have the dual function of being monster cards as well, so they're a bit more flexible in that regard. And modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is absolutely just littered with these types of cards, and we're going to be doing the hand trap history, if you will. We're going to be going through most of them, and I'm excited to see what you think about this just mechanic as a whole. So what do you think on the surface?
Your opponent, when you have a normal trap, you play it right face down, and then they know you've got a trap in play, and they don't know what it is, and then maybe walk into it, maybe not. With hand traps, they don't even know. They know that you could have one, but there's no indication that you do until you play it, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's quite a bit more difficult to play around for sure.
Exactly, especially since as you learn hand destruction / hand knowledge in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something that we don't really have very often. So as long as your opponent has a card in hand, there could possibly be a hand trap. So let's start with the absolute classic hand trap here. Your goal today is to evaluate these cards, see if you think they're good or not. But also, none of these cards were banned, but some of them may or may not have been restricted or limited in our sense to one copy. So you're going to try to guess if any of them, in your thought, are powerful enough to be restricted. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, let's start with the absolute classic.
Kuriboh is a 1-star, 300/200. It's a fiend effect. During damage calculation, if your opponent's monster attacks, you can discard this card and you take no battle damage from that battle. Oh, okay. So
this is the first hand trap they ever printed in the second set.
Gotcha. So you can basically discard this to stop a monster from getting you.
Correct.
But you wouldn't be able to save one of your own monsters.
No. So the monster would still be destroyed, but any damage that you would take from that battle would go to 0.
Okay. This doesn't on its face look super powerful to me, but stopping like a big attack, especially if there's like decks that are trying to like gear up for a big attack and that's what they're trying to combo or whatever, this could prevent that. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a cool card. I would definitely expect to make this as a hand trap. Like if you were to tell me, okay, you've got to design 20 hand traps, this is the kind of I would expect that some effect like this to appear within it. It's a complete clean effect. Doesn't seem super powerful, but I could believe it would be.
Okay. Do you think, out of curiosity, do you think this was playable? Like, do you think people actually played this card?
I would say no, except if there's a deck that's trying to like combo. Like I remember one of the combos you showed, I don't remember the names anymore. You put the continuous effect on your creature or your monster that may deal a ton of extra damage. Like that was like one of the one-turn kill combos or whatever. Like this would stop that sort of thing. Then it would be good if people were trying to do that to you. If they weren't, it feels like you're down a card to prevent some damage, which most card games that's not a great exchange.
Sure. So you don't think it's particularly good. So I'm assuming you don't think it was restricted in that sense then. All right, final answer.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
He's too good, ladies and gentlemen. You actually hit it right on the nose. So yeah, Kuriboh. This is a card from the anime. Everyone loves Kuriboh. He's very cute. He's one of our like little.
I've heard of him before.
Yeah, it's you might have heard it. It's one of those like secondary cards. It's not a blue eyes white dragon or dark magician, but he's around. He's a cute little guy. And it's funny because for the most part Kuriboh's bad. But in the exact instance that you mentioned, there was a small stint of time where people did actually side deck Kuriboh in case they were playing an opponent that was playing one of these like one-turn OTK decks, because there are plenty of tutors in our game as you come to learn.
Yeah.
So if the opponent was trying to clear the way for their big monster to get in to end the game, that tutor could then search Kuriboh because Kuriboh is very tutorable through a lot of means for people watching Sangue, Wizard of Black Forest, etc. So then they actually could buy themselves a turn and maybe get them on the crackback, so the combo essentially just didn't work, right? And so it was like the only time this card has ever seen play. But it's so cool that there's been a very like corner case situation that this card has actually seen a tiny bit of play. Very
Magic has cards like this that are Fog is the original one from the first Magic set. Prevent all damage creatures with deal this turn. And basically they're always bad, or there's a deck that uses so many of them that is really unfun to play against. So it's the kind of effect that doesn't go wrong unless it goes really wrong usually.
So I just want to throw this one out here for fun. This one's not particularly good. The rest of these I will actually say are probably at least like playable to an extent. So do keep that in mind as we go forward. Here is probably the actual first hand trap. We're actually going to be going in chronological order on release here. So
I'm getting this like historical view of Yu-Gi-Oh! Through the lens of typically very powerful cards, but I mean those are the standouts, right? DD Crow is 100/100, so extremely small. Quick effect. You can discard this card to the graveyard, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard, banish that target. Yeah, I mean I could see the use for this card, but I assume there's probably better ways to mess with your opponent's graveyard, especially since this just gets one card.
Do you think it's fine? Do you think this is acceptable?
It seems acceptable, yeah.
Okay, so no, not restricted?
I would be surprised if this was restricted.
And you would be correct. Yeah, DD Crow. Very solid card actually. This card actually still sees modern play, if you can believe that. Even though it might seem like on the surface that's you're taking like a -1 because you're effectively getting a card out of your opponent's graveyard. So like card economy wise, it's not like the best for you. But since each card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so individually powerful, sometimes getting a really good card out of your opponent's graveyard that will generate them a lot of value is enough to interrupt their turn, and sometimes enough to actually stop their turn right in its tracks. And so DD Crow is a card that has seen plenty of ubiquitous play throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, and for me one of the first hand traps that they ever printed. It's a pretty cool card. It's pretty iconic.
Yeah, I mean a card that can just get something out of a graveyard is a useful thing to have access to at the very least.
And let's move on to our next one. This one's cool.
Honest. Okay, it's 4 stars. It's on 1100/1900, so it's actual stats. It's a fairy and it says during your main phase you can return this face-up card from the field to your hand. During the damage step, when a light monster you control battles, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. That monster gains attack equal to the attack of the opponent's monster's battle until end of turn. Okay, so this is two different things, right? First of all, you can just return this when you want during your main phase, and that's just a standalone thing. Okay, and then during damage, when one of your light monsters are fighting, you get to discard this to basically make it take out whatever it's fighting against. It gets attack equal to attack of their monster, which presumably makes it good enough to win.
Right, it's almost always going to win if Honest gets dropped in that situation.
Okay, so you can play this if you want, and it's okay, but I guess you get to just bounce it if you rather have it in your hand, and you can use it as like a pump spell. Only works when one of your monsters is battling another monster, right? Like it doesn't do anything, it's just hitting them.
Right, if it's going face, it doesn't do anything.
I know you said these cards are all these plausible. This doesn't sound super strong to me. The ways I would want to use this, if there's like small light monsters you could play that like maybe give you value or put like some tokens into play, you can use this to trade them up for something big. That seems pretty good. I don't know how often you want to just like play this and then bounce it back to your hand. That seems like if you were going to do that, you could often just not play it. But I guess maybe it's a way to like run this out if you have nothing else to run out and then bounce it back if you're going to use it. My inclination is to say this isn't that strong, but if there's context that I'm missing, I could see it being good. It's certainly got some powerful things going on.
Okay, so final answer, you think it's fine?
Yeah.
Okay, well this is the first one. You're incorrect. If you can believe it, Honest was actually limited to 1 copy back around the time that it was printed. This was, to be fair, to help it out, some of the best decks around this time were light attribute focused decks. For people watching, we're talking about Light Sword and such. And Honest was just incredible because it was removal. Like you said, in the worst case scenario, you could just drop it down, poke your opponent for 11 and bounce it back to hand. So it kind of had like this really annoying protection, because you could just bounce it back to your hand and your opponent really couldn't do much about it. But for the most part, there's always this mind game when you're playing against anyone playing a light deck. And even to this day, people fear this card when they're playing up against a light focused deck. They're like, oh man, but what if they have Honest? You'll just lose on the back of them having Honest. It's one of those cards that has really traumatized Yu-Gi-Oh players over the years. Incredibly good card. By modern standards, it's at 3, and it's not particularly good. But in older Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a lot more combat focused, a lot more just back and forth, Honest, it was a absolutely like format defining card. It was really, really strong.
Interesting. Yeah, that I would not have. Well, clearly didn't get because I guess the other way.
The 1900 defense actually surprisingly is relevant as well. If you just needed a guy to like shove block and potentially like protect you, normal summonable monsters don't really have more than 1900 attack for the most part, especially when it was released. So if you needed to just buy some time, you could just set this face down, your opponent attacks into it, it flips up, they can't kill you, so they just pass the turn, and then you bounce on back to your hand, and then maybe you drew a good card on the following turn to do something else with it. So a lot of flexibility with this card, and it was limited for quite some time. Once it came back to 3, people were kind of freaking out because like, oh god, all the light decks are going to go crazy now because Honest is legal. But yeah, very fun card, very, very iconic card too for all Yu-Gi-Oh
It
players.
seems like a good, for lack of a better word, honest gameplay where you're just like trading your monsters for theirs and getting into brawls. That I can understand that. That at least seems less. It does seem less busted than some of the cards we've seen. But yeah, I can see. I guess just trading up is pretty powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, here's another cute little guy for you.
Hanawata is a 200-300 quick effect. You can discard a card. You take no effects damage this turn, so that's non-combat damage.
Correct, correct.
Okay, so there's two things. One is that like Kuribo, if there's an opposing deck that's trying to like graviton cannon or whatever the launcher was,
The catapult turtle.
Yeah, catapult turtle. That's what it was. Do something like that to you. This could maybe stop it. The other thing is if there's a deck that has effects that damage itself, combo with those, I assume to maybe get something really busted going. So this I wouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, I'm just going to guess it got restricted because there's probably some gross combo where you use this to stop one of your own cards from damaging you.
Interesting. Final answer?
Yeah, that's my final answer.
Yeah, this card sucks. It is actually used for the exact purpose of that you said, where if there are FTK decks in the format that will just win immediately on the first turn without you really getting to play, people will sideboard Hanawata. It's like basically the best card that does this. There's a couple, but Hanawata is just like the best one. So sometimes this card will see like very fringe play in the side deck for people who don't want to lose to like those particular decks. But aside from that, no one's using this for anything else degenerate. It's just a cute little card. And the fun of it format, right, is that this card was printed 20 years ago. It could randomly come up if there's a very degenerate deck in the format that people need this card. So randomly it'll spike in price because people need it, which is very, very funny. All right, doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. I think this one's going to be very interesting. So let's see what you think about this one.
Gores, the Emissary of Darkness. All right, this is what 7 stars, 2700, 2500. The Fiend. When you have to like lean in here. When you take damage from a card your opponent controls, you can special summon this card from your hand. You must control no cards to activate and resolve this effect. So that means nothing in play. When special summon this way, activate the appropriate effect based on the type's damage. Battle damage. Special summon 1 Emissary of Darkness token. Oh, what a card. This is a level 7 with attack and defense equals amount of damage. Okay, so if you have nothing in play and they hit you with a monster for 2000, you summon a 2000.
Correct. And the gold
Plus it, yes. Or if you took effect damage, you inflict damage on your opponent equal to the number of damage you took. I know that at the start I said, it's harder to play around cards in your opponent's hand because you don't know that they're going to have them. This is somewhat telegraphed, right? Your opponent doesn't have anything in play. You always have to be thinking about this card.
Okay.
I'm going to guess this got restricted based on how powerful it is when it works and how it has a bit of a chilling effect on like what your opponent's going to do if you have no cards in play. I guess there's a bunch of ways to play around this though. I mean, you could hit them for a smaller amount of damage, and if they don't use this, maybe you just pass without hitting them for more. That's one way to potentially. So someone's like, imagine if you think your opponent's slow playing a card because they want to get Gores down, and you hit them for like 1000 and they don't use it, you could then just not attack with your 3000 monster. I assume a legal play, right? You don't have to do.
Yeah, you don't have to attack. Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that like catches people by surprise when you just choose not to do something. But you're allowed to do that when you're playing around your opponent's cards. And that actually seems like a fairly effective way to play around. For effect damage, yeah, if you blast someone for a bunch, they could just play this. Though if you're killing them with that damage, this wouldn't stop you. This can't be used until after you've taken the damage. So
correct, right. So you would take the damage. So if you lose from that attack, the game's just over. Yeah.
This is a cool card. The restriction on having nothing in play is a big one. So that's like the biggest telegraph of this is if your opponent's not playing cards or you think that they have this. One thing I do like about this card a lot, it feels like this card minimizes being on the draw, going second. I'm sure a good amount because your opponent goes first and maybe hits you with something and you just play this. You didn't have an opportunity to play cards, so there's not really a big drawback. Very cool card. I am going to guess it's restricted. This does seem pretty strong to me.
Final answer?
Yeah.
You are so good, LSV. You are dead on the money. First, for the record, if you love Gores, the Edison format, the retro format I've talked to you about a couple times, this card's legal in it, and you can imagine this card is basically a format-defining card in that format because the amount of mind games that take place where you could just, on your opening turn, just pass, what's your opponent going to do? Are they going to fully commit? And if you have Gores, like the game's just over. Gores is the psychic damage that Gores has caused in the game is incredible. It's actually like you said, where it has forced people to now forever play a certain way where they always attack with their lowest attack monster first, just in case there is a Gores, because most of the time your opponent's going to hold it for the biggest attack thing, so the token has the most possible attack stat possible, so they can fight back on the crackback. But like you said, you could make them think that you're going to do that, but just only attack with your weakest monster, let's say you only have 2, and just not attack with the bigger one, and now they don't get to summon the Gores. There's a lot of mind games to be had with this card. But if Gores does hit the field, most of the time it is a huge swing for the player who summons it, and you have to really consider, especially in Edison format, I'm referring to specifically here, if Gores comes down and you don't have an answer to it, this card will win the game, just 100%, because the 2700 attack stat is huge. They're going to get a giant token, so that card shadow looms over that format. By modern standards, this card's not very good. Just been power crept kind of into oblivion at this point. But in old Yu-Gi-Oh, Gores was an absolute house, and even to this day, people will still attack with their smallest monsters first, just in case there is the slightest modicum of a chance that Gores is being played. People still play with that play pattern. It's really, really funny. But awesome card. Gores is really sick.
So what they need to do is then print a card that rewards you for attacking with your biggest monster first to really put people in the luck.
Pretty much, yeah. Some people will actually, if they have the read that their opponent has Gores, some people will actually attack with their largest monster first because they know that, especially if they're on low enough life points, that they're going to be like within lethal range. They'll attack with the larger monster first because they know they're going to drop the Gores anyway. So they'd rather get the extra few hundred points of damage rather than getting with a smaller monster. Yeah, so there's a lot of complexity with this card.
Cool card,
but really, really awesome card. Yeah. We gotta get to an Edison format if you like Gores because man, Gores is sick. Gores is awesome. All right, moving on. I wouldn't really call that a hand trap because it special summons itself to the field. Most hand traps you discard them for an effect, but I think it was worth it to show you.
I think it's about the same.
In spirit, the hand trap. In spirit, the hand trap. But this might be one of the most classic hand traps in the game. So let's see.
Effect Veiler. It's a 0/0, so it doesn't even do anything when you play it. It looks like, I guess. During your opponent's main phase, you quick effect. You can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, then target one effect monster your opponent controls. Negate the effects of that face-up monster your opponent controls until end of this turn. So this doesn't function as a monster, right? Like,
it is a monster in spirit. Let's say
you can play it face down as a monster, I guess.
You could if you need to jump block something. It is a body because remember everything has taunt in Yu-Gi-Oh. So.
Right, but 0/0 doesn't mean if this was face up on the board, it would just die.
So it wouldn't just die. It would just have 0. It just loses to everything.
Gotcha, okay.
Basically. Remember, our defense stat isn't toughness, so it doesn't die if it has 0.
Gotcha.
It just basically does nothing.
But what you can do, so an effect monster is a monster that has an effect. I mean, so not every monster is like that, but it's doing something if it has an effect.
Most of them are. Yeah.
And you can negate the effects of that face-up monster. I mean, this card seems like a very good one. Getting to stop whatever it is their monster is doing seems pretty great. So, for example, if you special summon Gores, this could counter the effect of making the token.
That is a particular instance where effect Veiler would not work for a couple reasons. First of all, it's during your opponent's main phase. Gores would be being summoned in the battle phase, unless you're using the second effect where it does the damage. But also, Gores also activates in like a window where effect Veiler wouldn't be able to respond to it. If that makes sense, it's sort of activating while still in your hand, so the effect isn't activated on the field. So you don't
Gores aside, I assume this does a pretty good job of dealing with most of the things monsters would do.
Yes, that's a fair assessment.
All right, well, I do think this card is strong. I don't think this doesn't appear to me like a card the kind of card that would be restricted. Like maybe it is, of course, I could be wrong, but it's an answer. It's not really doing anything broken. It's trying to stop broken things. I could see it being frustrating if they draw like multiple of these, but they are are trading a card to stop an effect of a monster, and they just get to keep the monster. So it kind of is card disadvantage. Obviously,
it is a -1.
It can be a pretty big tempo swing if they put a lot of resources into doing something. So I'm gonna guess this is both good and not limited.
All right, and you would be correct. Effect Failure is just a phenomenal card. Some things you might have missed actually is that this is, as well as everything that it does, it's also a tuner. And so now you know synchro monsters are in the absolute, I would say the worst case scenario, but it has the flexibility that if you don't want to use this to negate one of your opponent's cards, if you have the ability, let's say you already have like 7 stars worth of monsters on the field, you can play Effect Failure for your normal summon for the turn and synchro summon all that into a Stardust Dragon. So now you've actually converted this card that was a more defensive card into an offensive card. So it does have that flexibility. Being a light attribute is also quite a premium as well. Light and dark are the most supported attributes in the game typically, so just having that attribute is also very relevant. And being level 1 for the synchro capability is quite good, just because it can basically almost always synchro into something for the most part. So having that level 1 is quite good. But for the most part, people are using this to negate opponents' effects. This is like one of the first cards that could really just do this from the hand. Plenty of other cards have done this before that were trap cards or even spell cards, but this is the first one that was almost being able to not be telegraphed as much because you don't have anything face down. Also something important, there is no once return clause on this. So hypothetically, if you do have multiple copies of this card in your hand, you could negate multiple of your opponent's effects. Whether or not you want to do that depends on the context, but that is something that later on they started to learn with Yu-Gi-Oh! We need to put once returns on this, and we talked about that in previous videos before. But never restricted, just a very solid card. Still sees modern play actually. Effect Failure is it's actually because of that no once return restriction that Effect Failure is a very strong card.
Yeah, this is a cool card.
It is a cool card, very cool card. Also comes in a very beautiful rarity as well. I'll show you that one day. All right, we're moving on. Next card.
Swift Scarecrow. So 1-star, 0/0. It's a machine effect. When an opponent monster declares a direct attack, quick effect, you can discard this card, negate the attack, and then end the battle phase. This stops their first attack, presumably because you just use it right away, and then
well, it's a direct attack, so it doesn't have to be going face. Okay. So if you have a monster on the field, let's say you have a bunch of monsters, they have to attack the monster first, and then the first direct attack they would declare to you, you can activate Swift Scarecrow.
Oh, okay. So the way I would imagine this got used is in a deck that doesn't have a whole lot of monsters, doesn't care about monsters that much, like maybe a combo deck or something. Because if you have nothing in play, this does just, I mean, this actually kind of like Fog, the card I talked about. This does just stop their combat for the entire turn, right? Like you have nothing in play, you just use this to blank their first attack, and they can't attack anymore. This is the kind of card. This is exactly like I said about Fog. It either does nothing or very little, or is like really obnoxious because there's ways to like loop it. You've got ways to bring it back from the graveyard, or ways to like find two or a bunch of copies of this. I guess I'm gonna go. This is tough because honestly, it's like a coin flip for me. Like this card is.
Okay.
I have a hard time deciding. I'm gonna go with this. Did get restricted. This did get limited.
Okay. You don't seem super confident though.
Oh, definitely not.
And there's a reason you shouldn't be because this card is never been restricted. So Scarecrow is a fine card. I would say that most of the ways that this card was used were twofold. Either against very aggressive metagames where the opponent would commit a lot of resources and try to put 8,000 damage on the board. When they would go into attack, then you drop Swift Scarecrow, they committed all the resources, and now on the crackback, you can sort of pick apart their board and maybe they kind of went all in on that. So now Swift Scarecrow did its job essentially in allowing you to buy a turn so that you're now able to actually just turn the game around entirely. Where otherwise, where if a card like this didn't exist, they may not fully commit all the way. So that surprise factor there is definitely important. The other way this card was used in more degenerate ways is if you're playing against like burn decks or stall decks or Zodia decks, this just gave you another turn to draw more cards to try to find your alternate weight condition, right? And so that was like the two ways that this card was used. It was never really used in like typical decks, I would say, unless I'm talking like very aggressive metagames for those watching like Dragon Lure format playing this card, for instance. So it's a solid card, just not something that's always played all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like I said,
it's like with Fog,
it can definitely go wrong, but yeah, well, I guess in this particular case it did not.
Yeah. All right, let's see what you think about this card.
Droll and Luckbird. So it's a spellcaster effect, another 0/0. If a card or cards is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the draw phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. For the rest of this turn, cards cannot be added from either player's main deck to the hand. So you can use this once they've drawn an extra card.
Drawn an extra card or added a card from deck to hand.
Like tutored or whatever.
Yes.
But they get to keep that card.
They do get to keep the
But
card.
then they can't draw anymore. This doesn't look very good to me. It certainly could shut down some kind of decks. Like there was like a librarian fusion monster that would draw a card every time you did a synchro monster that every time you synchro summon you drew a card. Like this would stop those decks pretty effectively, I would imagine. This is only trading. I mean, you're trading a card to maybe stop them from drawing extra cards. You have to use this right when they draw the extra card.
You can use it at any point as long as they've done it. So you do it essentially in response to that card being added to their hand or drawn. So they would do that, and then the priority is passed over to you to make a response, so that you would activate this card.
Yeah, I guess my question is, so let's say you're playing against someone and they go like draw an extra card. You then have to use this, or can you wait with this in your hand until they try to draw another card?
You can wait until they try to draw another card, but you have to wait until after they already get that card. So you can't like gotcha them.
Right, that's kind of what I'm asking. Because like Magic has a lot of effects that stop you from drawing extra cards, and typically the best way to use them is they cast a spell that draws 2 cards. You play that in response to prevent those draws. This isn't really working like that.
No, this is more preemptive.
Yeah, this is going to be another one of those. If I get it wrong, that I'll chalk it up to me not knowing the context. It doesn't look very good to me. It looks like a defensive measure that you can only play after they've drawn an extra card, and then it stops them from drawing future extra cards. But like maybe they don't have more effects to do that, or maybe they just don't use those effects this turn. What was that really annoying thing called like Hyper C or Max C? Is that it?
Max C.
This is a pretty good way to stop that, right?
This can stop Max C. That's correct.
So that seems like a use. So I guess I don't think this card got limited. I would be surprised if that were the case. I do think it probably had some good uses, but on its face, it's not very powerful.
All right, and you would be correct. So Droll Lockbird is there's some context to this card. This card, we kind of call this like one of those like oh shit buttons, where if there are decks, think of like the Hyper Library combo, like you said, or any deck that has like some combo to try to draw its whole deck, or to just do a lot of unfair things, right? Droll Lockbird will enter those types of formats where people need something that is like a hard stop to these types of decks being able to do the thing that they do very well. But against like most decks, I would say like you wouldn't really want to play a card like this because maybe they're only going to be adding 1 card to their hand for the entire turn, right? So Droll Lockbird's never really going to get you any value. It is hilarious you picked up on the Max C thing because it is actually a way to use Droll Lockbird sort of offensively instead of defensively, because if your opponent Max C's and then they draw, you control them potentially, and now you can keep playing as though Max C weren't even there, right? There are better ways to deal with Max C, but theoretically this is a way to do that. It's very funny. But neat little card, but it's just it's kind of format dependent. But it does actually still see modern play. It is still good enough in those.
This is a great kind of card to have in print, which is it's good against people doing unfair things. It's a good safety valve in case that you need it, and it really only punishes people who are trying to do things that are busted. So I like having cards like that. It's a very healthy thing to have.
Absolutely, it sounds like a silver bullet card to kind of keep some of those decks in check for sure. All right, this guy, I love this guy's artwork. This guy's cool.
The Skullmeister. This is 4 stars. It's a 1700 attack, 400 defense fiend effect. When a card effect is activated in your opponent's graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to negate that effect. Okay, this card seems like a kind of a similar card to the DD Crow in that like it's graveyard hate, right? It stops cards in the graveyard. What's cool about this is presumably when they activate a card from their graveyard, they're also putting other resources into it, and so you then get to, instead of just DD Crowing it and then they can never use it like preemptively, it is generally better to be reactive and counter it because like that you get more out of that. So yeah, this seems like a cool card. It's also got reasonable stats if you do want to play it, which is nice. I would imagine that this card saw some play and wasn't limited, but there's certainly some cards that I'm sure this is great against.
Yep, and you'd be correct. This card is perfectly fine. I think one of the nice things about this is that compared to a lot of other hand traps, Soul Meister actually has attack points. So if you need to actually be somewhat offensive with this card, you can play it, and it actually has a reasonable sized body that it can actually, kind of hold its own weight in combat. But for the most part, yeah, this card is very comparable to DD Crow, which is I'm glad that you made that comparison. It really just kind of depends on the types of decks that are present at any given moment and like how they function, because DD Crow we kind of use it a bit more proactively, where Soul Meister is a bit more reactive, and depending on which one is kind of just better at handling a certain situation. Maybe some instances you play both, right? That's the fun, is that all these cards are available to you. But a card that doesn't see a ton of play. There are very specific formats where Soul Meister is incredibly good, but I'd say those are probably fewer and further between. DD Crow between the two is actually much stronger, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's all kind of context dependent. Where like if they have cards they're using their graveyard as resources, but they're not like activated, the Soul Meister doesn't really do anything, whereas the Crow still could break whatever that is up.
All right, we're gonna take a bit of a respite here because you mentioned it. So I think now that you've done a few of these videos, it'd be fun for you to reevaluate this card.
Yeah, so this is the infamous Max C. It's an insect effect. So 500, 200. During either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and this turn, each time your opponent special summons a monster, you draw a card. You can use one of these per turn.
So how's your perspective shifted on this card since I first showed it to you?
I certainly understand a lot more about kind of what's going on in the game, and this card seems incredibly both obnoxious and powerful. There's a magic card that I love. I absolutely love it. It's actually one of my favorite cards in the game. It's called Mystic Remora, and it's a 1-mana card. So you play it on the first turn, and it basically says whenever your opponent plays a non-creature spell, draw a card unless they pay 4, which is they basically can't at most points in the game.
Of course, on the first turn, no shot.
And like Max C, this only lasts 1 turn, so they have to decide whether to like wait it out, right, skip your turn effectively, and then if they have another Max C, you're probably too far behind, right, you lose. Remora has an upkeep, but it goes away naturally in a few turns. So they're both very similar play patterns. It puts your opponent in this bind where like, do I play cards and give my opponent extra cards, or do I just stunt my own progress and not develop my board? And I can tell you I would love playing with this card just because of how much I like Mystic Remora.
Well, you can. It's a master duel. It's legal. So.
It is certainly a card that seems way too strong. Like I know you said it was never banned, but limited.
Oh, this was banned. Sorry. So this is the exception to the whole video. I just wanted to throw this one in there.
I think it was banned the first time I saw it. I don't remember.
I think you did. Yeah, I just wanted you to reevaluate it.
But yeah, no, I can see. I now understand exactly how obnoxious this card is. Better understand how obnoxious this card is. And yeah, these cards are tough because it's hard to say what the right play is against them generally, and they really punish people who make the wrong decision. Where it's like, I'm going to run 3 monsters into this, and you're going to draw 3, and you're just going to demolish me, or I'm going to skip my turn, and that's even better for you. So it's a tough card to play against, I'm sure.
It's a lose-lose situation. Yeah. So it's funny because like in the Asian territories, in Master Duel, cards are legal. For us TCG players, it's not legal, and we're so happy for that because this card is
really obnoxious.
Yeah, very obnoxious. So much so that in the Asian territories, in Master Duel, there's kind of the meme that every deck starts off with 3 Max C, and every counter in the game to counter Max C, so you don't lose the Max C. So like the first 17 cards of your deck are already predetermined because of that.
There was a vintage tournament in Japan, actually in Kyoto, that I went to because it was at the same time as a Pro Tour, and my friend played my deck that had 4 Mystic Remoras in it, and I watched him play a game where he played a turn on Mystic Remora, and his opponent had a great hand and could have made a bunch of plays, but was just like, nope, I can see I'm done. Like,
oh no,
I can imagine Max C leading to similar like situations.
That's how it feels. It's incredibly frustrating. Yeah. Okay. So no point for that one. I mean, you hit it right on the first time I showed this to you. Anyway, but now I thought it'd be interesting because now you have more context. You can really understand how frustrating this card is. But there are some cards that we will be showing you, like this one I'm going to show you next, that can potentially counter Max C. So let's see what you think about this guy.
Psy Frame Gear Gamma, or PSY Frame Gear Gamma. It's a psychic tuner effect, got 1000 attack, no defense. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned by a card effect. When your opponent activates a monster effect where you control no monsters, quick effect, you can special summon both this card from your hand and 1 Psy Frame driver from your deck, hand, or graveyard. And if you do, negate that activation. And if you do that, destroy the monster. During the end phase, banish the face-up monster special summoned by this effect. Okay, so
I'll also show you Psy Frame driver. It's just a 2500 attack vanilla monster. For context.
Just sits in your hand because you can't play it. And then when your opponent, again, if you have no monsters and they activate a monster effect, you get to really punish them. You get to put this into play. You get to put a Psy Frame driver into play. You get to negate their activation and destroy the monster. And then the Psy Frame driver. And this also goes. They both go away, right?
Correct. They both get special summoned and then they both get banished during the end phase. Yep.
All right. Well, it seems like a strong card. It would get a lot weaker when limited because if you were to put 1 Psy Frame driver in your deck and or 2 maybe and like 3 of these, you'd feel pretty good about it. But if you could only play one of the Frame Gear Gammas, playing 1 Frame driver for it sounds like a not great ratio. Like because you don't really want to ever draw the Psy Frame driver.
Absolutely not. No.
It is a strong effect. The thing is, this one's a little easier to play around because the dude that we saw, Gores, because for Gores, like you do kind of have to attack your opponent eventually. That's how you win the game. If your opponent has no monsters in play, I feel like you could kind of refrain from activating monster effects sometimes. Like obviously sometimes you still will or have to, but it's a little easier to get away with not doing that. But the punishment here is pretty big. Like if you do,
yeah, this is the first one that actually clears the monster with it instead of just negating it.
And lets you, gives you a Psy Frame driver and the Gamma for until end of turn.
I will also let you know that helps your evaluation. There is a level 8 synchro monster.
Yeah, that was
Gamma. It's a tuner that you can make.
That was going to be kind of my next statement was like at least Psy Frame driver is 6 stars, so it looks like it'd be good fodder. But
this is a tough one.
Yeah, this one's close. This one has certainly a much higher percent chance of being limited than most of the cards here, so I'm leaning towards that. But it seems like
is that deck requirement, like the fact you have to play the driver, is that sort of the limiting factor for you?
That is part of that, and also the part that I imagine like you often will need to play into this, but sometimes you could just not. You could just attack them, right? Like instead of activating monster effects.
Yeah, you don't have to activate monster effects.
So I'm gonna guess this did not get limited. That's gonna be my guess. But I'm gonna guess
it is incredibly good. So good that if you can believe it, it is limited. It is in fact limited. It's been limited only for the past couple formats. It is an incredibly powerful card. Being able to not only get the effect but remove the monster has proven over time to be just incredibly strong because now they don't have the material to use that monster for a synchro summon or any of the other extra deck summons that we haven't gotten to yet. So removing that body as well is just a huge premium. Being able to stop, you can stop Max C with this card. So let's say hypothetically you activate a spell card that would go on the stack to special summon a monster. As Chainlink 2, your opponent would use Max C. Chainlink 3, you don't control any monsters yet, so you could use Psy Frame Gear Gamma to negate the Max C, and now your plays are going to go through, and you get the Gamma and the driver, so you get some more guys to mess around with as well. So being able to actually counter Max C is one of the best aspects of this card, or any hand trap as a monster for that matter, as long as you don't control monsters. There's just a lot of upside to this card, and it got to the point.
Traps too. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be on the field.
I thought it was a monster on the field. No, that makes sense.
It's monster effects in hand as well. Yeah, so this is an incredible card for your turn 0, so when your opponent's going first. Just a lot of flexibility with this card, and so much so that they ended up limiting it because it's just really powerful.
Do people still play like one of these and 1 frame driver?
For the most part, no, but it has been seen. I will say that people are crazy enough that they do sometimes think the 1 Gamma and the 1 bad driver is worth playing.
You can also
it really just kind of depends on the
play this without the frame driver if you really want to.
You do need the driver because if you cannot summon the driver, you cannot activate the Gamma. That is part of the effect.
Gotcha. Okay, needs his body. Well, yeah, that does. Limiting it makes it a lot worse. Like more so than most cards, I would say.
Exactly, but it's crazy because we have seen in all territories, some people have just played the 1 because especially the territories of Max C, they sometimes feel that it's worth it. So yeah, just crazy card. It's interesting because this card actually took a while for people to realize how good it actually was, and over time it just became better and better. And now it's limited, which is kind of crazy to think. Next card, we're getting some cool cards here. You're gonna think the artwork on this looks sick.
Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. yeah, this is cool. It's a 0 attack, 1800 defense. And it's a zombie tuner effect, so it's a tuner. I'm now picking up on that. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can quick effect, discard this card, reveal one card in your extra deck, then look at your opponent's extra deck, banish all cards in your extra deck with the same name as that revealed cards, and you can only use this effect once per turn. This is a very classic kind of style of card where you get to kind of go and get cards that they haven't played yet, like preemptively banish all copies of those cards. Magic, the first one's Cranial Extraction, they're all called Cranials now. I'm sure Yu-Gi-Oh does the same. Okay. But the first version of the effect kind of names that effect for a lot of people. Is this card good? Well, you can discard this card, reveal a card in your extra deck, and then banish all cards in their extra deck. So they have to control more monsters, but that doesn't seem like a huge drawback. Like it means that when you're going first, I guess this card's certainly worse, but when you're going second, this card you can just use it very easily. This looks like a pretty good reactive card. Like if there's a really powerful extra deck card that a lot of people are playing, A, you can put in your extra deck with no intention of playing it, just to use it for Ghost Reaper, and B, it could be really strong to be able to banish whatever their combo piece is. I don't think this got limited, but I bet it really cuts down on the viability of some really obnoxious decks.
Final answer?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people think the same thing. It's funny because like in practice, Ghost Reaper just doesn't work out as well as you would think it would. Like yes, there are the instances where if there's a lot of the same deck in the format, like say you have a tier 0 strategy that's just by far and away the best deck, everyone's playing it. Ghost Reaper in those instances seems really good because you're already playing the cards that you would read out of your opponent's extra deck anyway to cut off their plays. It kind of just plays out that it's like it's fine, but so there's so many times where if you don't see Ghost Reaper when you absolutely need to, like in the first turn or two of the game, it ends up being incredibly bad because later on it's gonna have like virtually no utility. There are instances where, don't get me wrong, where it will see play, maybe for the side deck specifically, and some people, like you said, will play cards in their extra deck that may not benefit their strategy at all, but they want to stop needing whatever the best deck is, so they'll play that best combo piece so that they can read out of their extra deck. It's really good if you can actually pull it off, but there are some instances where decks are so resilient that even if you hit like maybe their best combo piece out of the extra deck, they don't care. Like they can still win the game anyway because the engine of their deck is so strong that it doesn't matter. So it's a very contextually good card, but a lot of people like to play it and think it's the best thing ever, but then when they actually play with it, they realize I think there's just better card they can play with.
This is so funny because you could have, if I could have taken everything you said and replaced the Ghost Reaper with the Magic version, and it would have all been true. These effects are typically overvalued by an incredible amount. People love the ability to go, I'm going to go take this card out of your deck and you're never going to get to play it. But it's actually not that good. You have to preemptively use it. You're also expending a card to banish cards they may never even need or use. And overall, these effects, they're a great effect to keep printing because people love them, but they're one of those cards that are extremely sought after or like extremely desirable. People like them, these effects, and they're not very good. And that's actually not a bad place to be. It's good to make cards like that.
Yeah, and I think like at times like it's a fine card. So it's I would agree with all that. It's very funny though how it's an exact parallel to Magic with that card you mentioned. Cranial Extraction.
That was the original, the first version of that. Well, I guess Lobotomy was even the OG of that, but Cranial Extraction was where it really like became popular and it was overvalued by most people, I would say.
I will say though as well with Ghost Reaper as well as several of these next cards. These are called the Ghost Girls because they're sort of all like part of a similar theme. You're going to notice a lot of similarities, but Ghost Reaper is also a tuner. So similar to Effect Veiler, it does have some dual utility where it could potentially be used for synchro monsters if you absolutely have to. And having 1800 defense compared to something like Effect Veiler, which has 0, if you need to wall up with it, it's not the end of the world. There are times where you could maybe block an attack with it, and that's fine. But continuing on with the Ghost Girls, here's the next one.
Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So this is again 3 stars and a tuner. It's a psychic effect. Again, 0 attack, 1800 defense. During each player's turn, when a monster on the field activates its effect, or when a spell/trap card that is already face up on the field activates its effect, you can send this card from your hand or field, to the graveyard, destroy that card on the field, and you can only use this effect of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit once per turn. So when something on the field activates its effect, this can destroy that card, but it doesn't counter the effect.
So I will help you out a little bit here. In the instance of destroying a monster, it would not counter the effect. However, in the instance of if there's a continuous spell or trap card on the field that is activating its effect, mechanically, if a continuous spell or trap card is destroyed before it resolves its effect, it resolves without effect. Okay. So it would sort of counter these continuous spells and trap cards. Also, field spells, same thing. They need to be face up to resolve fully. So Ghost Ogre can also stop those.
Okay, so it's a pretty good counter to field spells or traps, and an okay counter-ish to monsters where it at least takes out the monster, though the effect still happens.
Right, the effect can still happen. And keep in mind, like you've seen with some of these cards, sometimes they have multiple effects. So maybe the first effect will resolve, but you stop them from resolving the second effect because the monster will get destroyed before they get the opportunity.
Yeah, this card seems pretty legit. Like I think if they're like having something that can blow trap cards or counter their effect, and also you could do it from your hand or field, so you could even play this and have it out there defending you and then just, sacrifice it when you need to. Sure. It doesn't seem like a card that would be limited to me, but it does seem like a card that has some decent utility.
And you'd be correct because that's exactly it. Got decent utility. Ghost Ogre is weird. It's kind of out of like the whole Ghost Girl region as far as all hand traps are concerned go. Ogre can be especially devastating because it does destroy the card, but it requires like the right decks to be being played for Ghost Ogre to be really potent and effective. So sometimes that's the case, sometimes not. So Ghost Ogre will hop in and out of formats appropriately. The fact that it can also be set from the field is relevant because psychic type monsters specifically have a spell that special summons them directly from the deck. Not every archetype or type or attribute in Yu-Gi-Oh has that. So Ghost Ogre actually meets the criteria for that. So in a pinch, you could use it to get it onto the field so that its effect is kind of primed if you need to like stop something your opponent's doing, or if you want to use it as a tuner to synchro it off into something as well. Just a lot of flexibility on this card. So I think it's probably better than Reaper in a lot of instances, but still situational, if that makes sense.
But my understanding now how the Yu-Gi-Oh, that kind of chain works, the comments on your last video were very illuminating. You couldn't use that spell to put this into play, then use this to stop something, right?
They would have to use something. So let's say use the spell to put this into play. If they did something in response to you activating that spell as Chain Link 2, then no, you wouldn't be able to Ghost Ogre. But after you summon out the Ogre, if they do something that Ogre's a viable target to destroy, then you could.
But there's not like a quick effect where they activate a trap card in response, you quick effect, put this into play from your deck, and then use this. Like, that's not something that can...
Correct. That is, I think, one of the biggest differences between the stack and Chain Links is that once a chain is resolving, nothing else can be put onto the chain.
Right, whereas Magic lets you just keep inserting things there.
That's definitely a big difference. For a lot of effects, I think we have a much different game if that were the case. All right, let's keep going with the Ghost Girls.
All right, this is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This is a little cheerier, this one. So again, 3 stars, zombie tuner effect with no attack and 1800 defense. When a card or effect is activated that includes any of these effects, quick effect, you can discard this card to negate that effect. Okay, so add a card from the deck to the hand, special summon from the deck, send a card from the deck to the graveyard, and you can only use this once per turn. Oh, this one's quite a bit more powerful, I would imagine. Negates card draw or tutoring, getting something from the deck, special summoning from the deck, or sending a card from the deck to the graveyard. Again, this doesn't feel like a card that should be limited, but this one's closer than the other two for sure, because this, if there's a metagame where this is frequently countering a lot of the things that are out there, like that could get a little bit tiresome. But I would still guess this wasn't limited, but is good.
And you are correct. This is actually maybe one of the best hand traps Yu-Gi-Oh's ever made. And you didn't pick up on it, but it does counter Max C, which is one of the best reasons why people like it so much. I remember I did a video when this card was like first printed on every single card at the time that Ash Blossom stopped. And I think it stopped something like a fifth of the card pool or something ridiculous, because when you add all 3 of those bullet points together, it stops so many different cards in the game that there's almost nothing bad that it can stop at the end of the day. You're going to find something. Now, I don't want to say